Hey, this is Leo for Actualized.org, and in this video, we're going to talk about emotional intelligence. All right, so emotional intelligence. Why is it important? Well, first, before we even get into that, let's say emotional intelligence is also defined as EQ, kind of like you have IQ, which is your intelligence quotient. Well, here you also have EQ, which is your emotional quotient. So I'll be saying interchangeably emotional intelligence sometimes, other times I'll be saying EQ to be compared to IQ. All right, so why is EQ important? Well, what they've actually discovered after doing lots of research in the last really 30 years, they've done so much research about what creates performance and success in business and in careers. And what they really found is that people who are successful, the number one factor is not IQ, it's not intelligence. The number one factor is EQ, it's emotional intelligence. It's your ability to work with emotions. That is what's critical. They've done so many studies in colleges and universities and in corporations across the country and the world that really document this and demonstrate this. We would kind of commonly think that, well, if somebody is smart, if they have a high IQ, then that person can get a lot of stuff done. And sometimes we even say that, well, he's so smart, he's got like a really sharp mind, he's able to get stuff done. That's not actually very true. People that are extremely smart, technically speaking, on the IQ scale, if they have a very high IQ, actually, they tend to not produce that much. They tend to be not that successful. When your IQ gets like above 150, it tends to actually be counterproductive because you're so much in your head all the time and you lose touch with the emotions. And the emotions are what really create success in life because life is about relationships. Life is about being able to be in relationship with others, and it's also understanding yourself and being able to control and manage your own emotions. So if you can do that, if you can develop strong emotional intelligence, then you are going to be successful and your relationships are going to be more successful. You're going to be happier there. You're just going to be happier alone by yourself naturally. You're going to have better control. You're going to be able to do things. You're going to be able to execute on the things that you want to execute on because you're going to have the discipline and the willpower, and you're not going to have those super high highs and those super low lows in life. You're going to have a more even-keeled trajectory through life, and that tends to be what produces success and high performance. So that's ultimately why you should be interested in EQ. Now, EQ, we should clarify what it is and what it's not. Let's start by what it's not. A lot of people will assume that EQ talks about sociability. And what emotional intelligence means is that you're extroverted and that you're confident and that you're a people person. And you're very gregarious, right? We know those types of people. That's the cliche extrovert. Well, that's not what emotional intelligence is about. Emotional intelligence, in fact, is something that dovetails very nicely with introverts. So, for example, I'm a very strong introvert, but I also have a high emotional intelligence, and this is something that I actually measured through tests. So I got tested for this, and you can take assessments online and in books and other places. So the two are not opposed at all, and the two are not synonymous. Being sociable and being emotionally intelligent is not necessarily synonymous. So what is emotional intelligence then? Let's really define it. Let's break into it. So here's the definition that I got from a book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0, which I highly recommend you check out because they've got a very in-depth explanation with lots of examples, and then they give you assessments so you can actually assess yourself and get scores, which is nice. So it's not subjective, it becomes very tangible. So definition of emotional intelligence is, and I'm reading this off, the ability to recognize and understand your emotions in yourself and in others, and your ability to use this awareness to manage your behavior and your relationships. So that is EQ in a nutshell. Now, there's really 4 pillars, I'm calling them 4 pillars of emotional intelligence. And they were part of that definition, if you notice. Pillar number 1 is your ability to understand your own emotions. Being able to label your emotions and just recognizing what you have and having a broader range of emotions. So having more awareness there. That's pillar number one. Pillar number two is your ability to control your emotions. Because it's one thing to just know your emotions, what you're feeling, label it. It's a totally another matter to be able to manage it, to be able to discipline yourself, control yourself, so you're not having those crashes and you're not having those ecstatic peaks, but you're somewhere in the middle and you're even keeled. That's controlling your emotions, pillar number two. Pillar number three is your ability to read emotions in other people. You might call this empathy. It's your ability to understand what other people are experiencing and feeling, being able to relate to that using your mirror neurons. You're relating to that and you're understanding their point of view. It's really the ability to step into somebody else's shoes and look at life or a situation from their perspective. That's pillar number three. And pillar number four is your ability to then manage your relationships. So how smooth are your relationships going for you? How well are you communicating and interacting within them? That is also determined by your EQ. So EQ consists of all these four pillars, and actually in that book, Emotional Intelligence 2.0, I took tests and I got tested and I got a score for each one of those pillars. So you might be stronger, and you probably are definitely stronger in some of these four than you are in others. So maybe, for example, you are really good at controlling your emotions, but you're not so good about managing your social relationships. Or maybe you're really good at identifying your emotions, but then you can't really control them. And so you know what you're experiencing, you can label it, and you're self-aware, you're very conscious, but then you're just struggling to actually then practically manage that and channel it into your work or the habits that you're trying to instill in your life, like you're working on your diet or your gym. So, you can have different levels. And of course, the idea is that the higher you are in each one of these, the better, because you want all of them maxed out, ideally. The more emotional intelligence you have, the better you're going to do in life, the happier you're going to be. So you want them to be maximally at 100, each one at 100. All right, so those are the four pillars. I'm sure you have a deeper understanding now of what EQ is. Let's also talk about how this actually relates to some of the stuff that happens in our life, because it might still be a little bit abstract at this point. It might be a little bit unclear as to how EQ can really help you and how it impacts you already, because it's already impacting what's happening in your life. And in fact, if you're having struggle in relationships, whether your intimate relationship or relationships at work, with your boss, with coworkers, with employees, then that's a really big sign that you have trouble in at least one of these four pillars, if not all of them. So let's talk about that. So here's a list of the things that EQ is controlling or is tied to. These are some of the effects of EQ. Firstly is anger management. Are you able to manage your anger well? If you are, then you have high EQ. If you're not, then you have low EQ, probably because, well, you're failing on those first two pillars. You're not very conscious about it, about your feelings, and secondly, you're not able to control them very well. So that's an example right there. Next is accountability. How much accountability are you able to take on yourself rather than blaming other people? That's connected to EQ. How about honesty and trust? That one is connected to EQ too. How honest are you with yourself? But then also, how honest are you able to be in social situations without having to be pressured into lying or telling white lies or being distrustful of people? So honesty and trust are big, and those are really tied to EQ. You've also got assertiveness and confidence. These are big. If you're lacking in assertiveness and you're lacking in confidence, then you're also lacking in emotional intelligence. Communication. How good of a communicator are you? Can you communicate in your intimate relationship? How about communicating at work? If you're not able to communicate effectively, that shows a lack of emotional intelligence. How about stress tolerance? Are you always stressed? Are you frantic? Are you anxious? Thinking negative thoughts? Always judging yourself, feeling guilty? Well, that is a sign that you don't have very strong emotional intelligence. You're faltering on one of those four pillars. How about decision making? How strong are you of a decision maker? Do you find yourself waffling all the time, making a decision, then going back, then going forward, then going back, and going forward, or not being able to decide between two things for a long time? Procrastinating. This is a sign of low emotional intelligence. How about flexibility? How flexible are you? Do you flow with life? Are you able to handle the challenges and situations that are coming up with life? Or are you very rigid and set in your ways and everything is bumping into you and causing you all sorts of pain and suffering? That's a sign of low EQ. How about presentation skills? Probably more related to work. How well are you able to give a presentation? To speak? To convince people, to motivate people, to inspire people, especially if you're a manager. This is very, very applicable. And good managers must have high EQ to be able to influence their employees in a effective way. Also, the next point is listening skills. How about listening skills? How good of a listener are you? Are you able to really listen to what people are telling you? Are you able to understand it, to really empathize with it? And are you able to then show them, reflect back to them that you did understand? Do people think that you're a good listener, or do people think that you're a poor listener? Well, if you're a poor listener, then that's tied to low EQ. So that is the list, and I'm sure there's more. These are just some of the most obvious ways in which EQ connects to your life in all these different areas. But of course, it relates to your intimate relationships very much. It also relates to how you're doing at work, how you're talking to clients, all of that. It also relates very much to how peaceful and happy you feel just inside by yourself. Because if you're always frantic and you're always sad or depressed, or you're having any of these kinds of negative emotions, you're angry all the time, you're guilty, this shows a lack of emotional intelligence because you're not recognizing them in yourself first and foremost, but then you also don't have tools and strategies for how to manage them. And then you're expressing them, and then it's also impacting your relationships out in the real world. So it affects you and it affects the world. So that's you can see how powerful this idea is and how many aspects of your life it affects. It literally, the tentacles from EQ literally spread into almost every single aspect of your life. This is why this idea is so important. So now we know what EQ is. We've really defined it. I think you have a good, strong sense of how it relates to your life with all these examples. The question now is, how do you go about developing it? Or even can you develop it? What can you do about this? What if you happen to be low in one of these areas? What if you don't really have a strong sense of your emotions? What if you don't have good control? What if you can't empathize? What if you are a bad communicator or bad in relationships? How do you manage that? Well, the good news is that more so than IQ, EQ is highly developable. That means you can develop it. You can work on it. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not a week-long process. It will take you months to do this, but you can work in pinpointed ways on those exact deficiencies that you have in each one of these 4 pillars. You can do things to retrain your mind, to think in new ways, to make new distinctions, to understand new things, and to put new communication skills into place so that these things are brought up to the maximum. And that's work that you can do. I actually do a lot of that work through coaching. A lot of the videos that I share with you guys, although I don't explicitly say that this is about EQ or emotional intelligence, ultimately this is what Actualized.org is about. We're helping you understand emotions. We're helping you understand your psychology, and psychology is very emotion-laden. And then we're helping you understand how to master them through all these different techniques. So, for example, something like meditation or something like journaling could be a technique that you can use to reduce your stress or to build more understanding of your emotions. Something like coaching is something you can use to understand your emotions better. Reading books and about this stuff can help you understand your emotions better than going out there and actually practicing some of this stuff. So there's a lot of different practical techniques that you can use and you should use to actually go out and work on each one of these pillars. I don't really have time to go into them. It's such a deep topic. There's literally hundreds of them. So I can't cover them all. I'm going to have other videos that cover how to work probably on each one of these pillars and share more of these techniques with you. But this video, the purpose was just to show you that this is out there, get you to start to understand that emotional intelligence is important, and then hopefully give you a sense of this is something that you should care about, and you should probably have a sense right now whether you are lacking in one of these 4 pillars or in all of them. Do you think you have low EQ or high EQ? Well, now you probably have a better sense, although you can go out there and actually get it tested objectively through some of these surveys that they have in books and online. which I highly encourage you to do. But ultimately, now you got a sense of this, and now you're a little bit more bought in to this idea that emotions are important. Self-control is important. It's all connected to your success in life. All right, this is Leo. I'm going to be signing off. This is what I have to say about EQ. Go ahead, leave me your comments. Please like this and share this. I want to spread the message. And of course, check out Actualized.org because we have an awesome newsletter there that I want you to subscribe to. It's free weekly updates with new video articles, other goodies, and really you want to be signing up because you're getting more information about how to develop self-awareness, how to interact with other people, how to understand your psychology and the psychology of others. Because once you understand yours and the psychology of others, and you have some techniques for how to manage your psychology, well, then everything starts clicking for you, and your EQ raises, and then you can accomplish amazing things. So sign up. We got some free bonuses there and new updates every week.